All right, what's up, Flight Critters? Hey, this is Sean Eaton, and today is FlightCrit Friday. We're going to be introducing the FPC exam for those of you that are preparing for your exam coming up. And I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks to help you get ready for the exam. Hey, if you are watching the broadcast, right over here, there is a Q&A board. So if you have questions that you want answered, you can go ahead and type them in, especially if you're on, I think if you're on the Google Hangouts live, you can bring that up. It's on the left-hand side of your screen. There's a Q&A tab, and I think that's where you can type in your question, and it'll pop up on my screen. And I'll cover them for you. So I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes, see if there are a few people that pop in, see if I get any questions. So we will we'll just hang out, and then we'll get started. I don't want anybody to miss out on any of the content. So anyway, this is my home. You can see behind me. We got some pictures of the family. Just kind of let you guys know that I am for real. Drinking my coffee this morning. What else we got going on here? All right, let's see here. Hope the video quality and the audio quality is good. I've got my microphone dialed in, I think. So anyways, if it's not so great, let me know, and I'll be sure to make some adjustments. All right, this is looking good. All right. Well, while we're waiting for a few more people to pop in, I'm going to pull up a couple documents that I'm going to want to share with everybody. So just bear with me. Okay. All right, we're gonna go over to the. I'm gonna browse over here to the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic website and try to pull in some items, some forms that you're gonna want as you prepare for the exam prep. Bring up this page. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but bam. Okay. Turn this off. You don't need to see that anymore. Turn that off. All right. All right, so here on the under Showcase, if you click on Showcase, you can see this. I've brought up the Board Critical Care Transport Paramedics Exam Preparation page. You can click on that link, and it'll take you straight over to their site. That's where you can access the actual review material provided by the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic Certification. And on the left-hand side of the page, there's an FPC content outline. That link brings up a summary of the material that is covered in the exam. And this is going to be what you want to use primarily as you prepare for your exam. It's going to break down all the categories: trauma management, aircraft fundamentals, safety and survival, flight physiology, advanced airway management techniques, neurological emergencies, critical cardiac patients, respiratory patients, toxic exposure, obstetrics, neonates, pediatrics, burns, general medical, and environmental. So those are the categories that are covered on the exam. And there are a certain number of questions on the exam applicable to each category. So you definitely want to be aware of those categories and how much they're weighted in the exam. So I am going to, when we get down later on in the broadcast, I am going to talk about some of the tips that you should be aware of when you go to sit down for your exam, tips that are going to help you maximize your chance of successfully passing this exam on the first attempt. So without further ado, let's go ahead and we're going to talk about the FPC exam. If you haven't already dove in and looked at the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic Certification's website, a lot of this will be new. If you've been preparing for the exam for a while, a lot of this will be just a refresher, but it is good information to know. First of all, the FPC exam, the CCP exam, and the Tactical Paramedic Certification Exam are both sponsored by the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic Certification. Their website I'll post up here as well. You should see that pop up under Showcase right now, bcctpc.org. That is where you're going to go to find any material that you need for those exams. It's also from there you're going to link to the page for registering for your exam. So the exam is offered in two formats. One is a written format and the other is a computer-based format. And when I took my exam, both the FPC and the CCPC, I did the computer-based exam for a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot easier, I feel, to be able to sit down at a computer and run through the questions. It is a little bit more expensive, but that was minimal for the benefits. Secondly, I'm just more comfortable working on the computer. That's why I do these broadcasts. The other thing is you get your results immediately. So if you take the written exam, it's just like sitting down for your national registry, although perhaps some of you are of the era where the national registry exam was given electronically as well. I did the written exam almost 13, 14 years ago. And it was painful. You sit in a room with 150 other people all taking the exam at the same time. And it was just, I don't know, inefficient. And so in the name of efficiency, I like the computer-based exams. So if you go to the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic Certification Exam, you can find out all the information. But here's kind of the lowdown. The two options are the written exam and the computer-based exam. The written exam will cost you $275 if you are not an IAF CCP, or International Association for Flight and Critical Care Paramedics member. If you take the computer-based exam, that's a $335. So, what is that? Yeah, $60 difference. It'll cost you a little bit more, again, if you're not a member. Now, if you are a member of the IAF CCP, you get a $100 discount. Okay, great. So now the computer exam is $235. The written exam is $175. But I highly recommend you join the IAF CCP. You will get I think it's 3 or 4 times a year. You get a magazine from them that kind of highlights what's going on in the industry. You support our body that kind of advocates for us, and you get a discount on the FPC and CCPC exam. So the membership fee for joining the IAF CCP is $80. Yeah, it's $80 and then it's $60 to renew. Now it's a 3-year membership, And so, you sign up for the membership and you save 20, overall you save $20, off your FPC exam. So highly recommend doing that. Like I mentioned previously, hey, I can see that there's somebody who just popped in and is viewing the broadcast. Hey, thanks for jumping in. Come over here on the Q&A portion and let me know who you are and where you're viewing from. And if you have any questions, just hop on in. Sorry you missed out. Okay, so written exam versus computer-based exam. If you do the written exam, you're going to sit down, you're going to take the exam, you're going to leave, you're going to go home, and 4 to 6 weeks later, you're going to get a notification in the mail telling you that you passed or not. I don't know about you, but it is worth the extra $100 to know right away. And that's what the situation is that's what the deal is with the computer-based exam. When you sit down for the exam, the computer-based exam, it's a 2.5-hour exam. You're going to get up, you're going to walk out, and almost by the time you leave the testing room, they're going to have your results. So you know right away whether you passed or not. And that's pretty satisfying, knowing that all your hard work, all that time and anguish and stress going in to prepare for the exam paid off. You can they print off a certificate for you right away. You can submit that to your employer for your raise. I know that most employers, two flight services that I've worked for, have given a raise to people with their professional certification. So I have both my FPC and my CCPC, primarily for that reason, but also that it shows that I'm committed to the industry and committed to my trade. I feel like anything that we can do to be better providers of medicine, we should do. And then, within a couple of weeks after that, you'll actually get your certificate from the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedics saying, congratulations. You'll get your little card. You'll get a patch. You'll get a pin. So it's pretty cool. You can put that on your flight suit, whatever. But just knowing that you passed the exam right away, super, super big bonus. Okay, so registering for the exam, you're going to go to the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic Certification.org, CCP-C.org, and I'll bring that back up. I just wanted to hop over here and make sure that there weren't any questions that I missed. So come back over here to Showcase, and you'll be able to see the website for the body that hosts or that sponsors the FPC and CCPC. Pay your fee right on the site, and within 3 to 5 days, you'll be able to register for your exam. Okay. There is a link on that page. It's going to send you over to the actual testing agency that sponsors the test, and from there you'll get it scheduled. They've got over 50. They've got computer-based testing centers in over 50 states. Super easy. Most of them are at H&R Block centers. I will post a link for a video. It's the AMP is the name of the agency that actually does the computer-based testing. But let's see here. Let me see if I can showcase this. All right. So I am going to be throwing up a video here, AMP procedural video. There you go. It should be live here in just a minute. And you should be able to see that link for a video that basically walks you through the whole process of what to expect when you show up at the testing center the day of your exam for your test, and how the actual computer-based testing process works. So take a look at that. That's pretty awesome. Like I said, instant results. Another thing about the test that I really like, they've done a really good job. You can skip questions, and this is going to tie right into a couple of my top tips for passing the exam on your first attempt. You can skip questions, and it logs the ones that you've skipped. You can then come back to them towards the end and revisit those questions. So it's a great tutorial. It is a timed exam, so you do need to be aware of that. I think it's 2 hours and 30 minutes, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And so as you're running through these questions, you need to be very aware of your time. And there is a timer on the exam that lets you know exactly how much time you have left. And that's a super helpful super helpful tool. Let me see here. Right now I'm currently looking at the Flight Paramedic Exam content page. 125 questions, 2.5 hours to complete the exam. So there you go. All right, what next? Boom, 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 boom. Let's talk a little bit about the exam. And this is going to be a broad overview. I'm not going to get into any specific category content. That'll be next week. Next week, we are going to launch right into our first category in the preparation for the FPC. So just to kind of give you a rundown on what I'm doing, every week, FlightCrit Friday, we're going to be covering a category. Kind of from here going forward, we're going to be covering a category for the exam, talking about how to prepare for the exam, and we're going to break it down category by category. So next week, we're going over flight physiology. There are 7 questions on the exam pertaining to flight physiology. I have gotten some questions from people recently about FPC versus CCPC and whether or not I suggest they take both exams on the same weekend, and if preparing for one prepares you for the other. And the answer to that, the simple answer to that question is no for both of those. First of all, these are difficult tests, and they're extremely mentally taxing. And when you finish one, you're going to be tired, even though it's only 2.5 hours. It's like a marathon. So I don't recommend people doing these on the same weekend. I recommend at least splitting them up by a week. 2 weeks. I did mine years apart, but I had to study separately for both exams. So, if you're in a situation where you can go and you can take one exam and then take the next one the next week, and you want to do them both, I don't think that that's a bad idea, or I don't think it's going to hurt you, but I don't recommend doing them on the same week or weekend. Next part of that question is, does preparing for one also prepare you for the other? And again, the answer to that is no. The Flight Paramedic Exam, or the FPC exam, does have a fair amount of emphasis on the flight environment, right? It's the Flight Paramedic Exam. So there are things that you're going to need to know for the Flight Paramedic Exam that you would not necessarily study when you are preparing for the CCPC exam, and vice versa. Like I said, flight physiology is one of those things that just does not show up on the CCPC exam. Aircraft fundamentals, safety and survival, again, that just does not show up on the CCPC exam. And taking those two together, those are 21 questions out of the entire exam. That's, out of 125, that's 10% of your exam right there. So those categories are just not going to apply. Trauma management, not so heavily emphasized on the CCPC exam, because that test assumes a little bit more that you're doing interfacility transfers as opposed to scene flights like we do in the flight environment. Probably 15 to 25% of most programs flights are scene flights. Now, to that, when I took the CCPC exam recently, even though there was a relatively small portion of that exam that covered pediatric neonates and OB, what I found was there were a lot of questions that, even though they were not necessarily neonate questions, they may have been classified, and of course this is all presumptive of me. I don't really know how or which category the questions fell into, but they could have been part of airway management, a category, or medical category, or cardiac category, but they involved pediatrics and they involved neonates. So even though they were not necessarily a pediatric or neonate category question, you still had to think of them with the background, with the knowledge of pediatric and neonate. So it was challenging in very different ways. And actually, I felt personally that the CCPC in some ways was more challenging because of those circumstances. There seemed to be a greater emphasis on pediatric and neonates. So I'll come back to this in a little bit. So the FPC exam, it is broken down into these categories, and I'll cover them again for people who may just have popped in and aren't familiar with this outline. But if you go to the Board of Critical Care Transport Paramedic Certification Exam, bcctpc.org, and on the homepage under exam, at the top, you scroll down, there's exam preparation, and that'll take you to another page, and you'll see the FPC preparation content outline on there. You want to click on that, and it opens up a PDF that covers everything that's on the exam. There's also some test questions on there, or practice questions. So what do we got here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 categories. And within those categories, they're broken down into the following. You got trauma, you have aircraft fundamentals, safety and survival, flight physiology, advanced airway management techniques, neurological emergencies, critical cardiac patients, respiratory patients, toxic exposure, obstetrics, neonates, pediatrics, burns, general medical, and environmental emergencies. Now, I will say the three heaviest categories are in order is critical cardiac patients, and that's going to cover everything from balloon pumps seems to be one that keeps popping up. People are getting a lot of balloon pump questions, not just the indications, contraindications for the balloon pump, but also waveform recognition, how to time the balloon pump, etc. Then the second heaviest category is aircraft fundamental safety and survival. It's totally unrelated to medical. It's all about keeping you safe operating around the aircraft. Covers things like aerodynamics and how does a helicopter fly and how does the airplane fly, how to survive in the event of a hard landing. Good grief. I'm going to have to go back and look up some more topics on that one, but it's all about your safety. There's a 3-3-3 rule. You can or 2-2-2 rule. You can generally survive 2 minutes without oxygen. What is it? 2 days without water, 2 weeks without food, and shelter, something like that. I'll have to go back and look at that also. But things like that, kind of keeping in your mind, how to keep yourself safe. The third category that has the heaviest weight is actually, let me go back here for a minute. The first category is the critical cardiac. Excuse me, I missed this one. Second heaviest weighted category is the general medical, and that's going to cover a broad range of topics. And then the third is your aircraft fundamentals, and the fourth is your trauma management. And then just to throw in another one, your fifth is going to be your advanced airway management techniques from RSI, intubation, fiber optics, crike, understanding oxygenation, understanding blood gases. That's going to be in your airway management as well. Okay, so that's the content. So a lot of people go into the exam thinking, okay, if I just learn if I learn this information, if I memorize blood gases, if I memorize the gas laws, Boyle's law and Henry's law, and so on and so forth, then I will be solid in taking this exam. Doesn't work that way. The exam is broke. The questions on the exam are written according to this Bloomberg's, or what is it? It's Bloom's Revised Taxonomy of Learning. If you're not familiar with Bloom's Revised Taxonomy of Learning, I highly recommend you go and just do a quick Google search just so you understand it. But I'm going to simplify. I'm going to break it down for you right now. Bloom was a dude who looked at learning, I don't know, 100 years ago, something ridiculous. And he kind of figured out how it is that people learn. And what he found out, I think it's broken into 6 categories. Basically, people start off by acquiring knowledge, then they comprehend that knowledge, right? So, okay, how do I describe this? They acquire the knowledge. I know what the rule of nines is. Okay. And then you have to be able to comprehend it. Okay, well, the rule of nine or the rule of palm or how, whatever however you want to call it, that is a way for identifying, total body area burned. And so if I look at somebody's arm and I say, okay, well, their arm's burned, then I know that, that's 9% body surface area. So first of all, it's just understanding what the rule nines is, and then understanding what it's used for. And then the third step is application. And this is where it gets a little bit more challenging. The first two steps, the knowledge and the comprehension, those are what's considered lower levels of learning. And then you get up into the higher levels of learning, which is the application and beyond. I'm not going to get into the higher, the upper three levels of learning because they're just not applicable to the exam. Now, later on, somebody came along and revised the Bloom's taxonomy of learning to make it more active as far as rather than passive in nature. And so the verbs that are used to describe the three levels of the lower three levels is remembering, understanding, and applying. Okay. So recently there was a question that came up in the social media world. Is a test. It was a prep question that somebody was trying to get clarification on, and it talked about giving what is a contraindication for TPA in a patient who has stroke-like symptoms and a seizure. Okay, and some of the options were an aortic aneurysm, oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I guess the question was, what is a contraindication for the use of TPA in a patient with stroke-like symptoms? One of them was seizures. The other one was an aortic aneurysm. Another one was surgery, 6 months ago. Okay. And I'll use this example to kind of help you better understand this revised taxonomy of learning. If you are at the remembering phase of your learning process, you will say, okay, well, according to the American Stroke Association, these are the contraindications for giving TPA: active bleeding, a history of hemorrhagic stroke, a witnessed seizure. Witness seizure. There are some other ones as well, but those are kind of the big ones. Recent surgery, I think it's within a couple weeks, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you'll be able to go, okay, well, boom. I can remember what the contraindications are for the use of TPA in a stroke, and you might look at those contraindications and these examples: seizures, aortic aneurysm, and surgery 6 months ago, and you go, well, none of these fit those known contraindications. Okay, then you might understand it a little bit better, and you go, okay, well, let's see, how can we apply this? I understand that, hey, an aortic aneurysm, if it ruptures and somebody's given TPA, you're never going to be able to stop the bleed. So maybe that's the correct answer. Or, hey, I can remember I've got this patient, they've had a stroke, and the family tells me that they had some kind of surgery, but they're not really sure when. And maybe you go, okay, well, stroke surgery, and I remember that, it's contraindication. So maybe I need to dive in a little bit deeper, figure out, okay, when exactly was this surgery? And then you realize, oh, okay, it was 6 months ago. It's not an issue. And then this applying is the first level of the upper level of questions. And this is the type of question that the majority of the test is written to. Okay, you're going to get very few questions that are going to ask you to just simply recall information. You're going to get like for instance, what is Boyle's law? Well, Boyle's law says that as pressure goes down, volume goes up. Boyle's balloon, as a balloon rises, the pressure, the atmospheric pressure decreases, the volume in the balloon expands, and that is Boyle's law. You're going to get very, very few questions like that. You're going to get a little bit more, a few more questions that are understanding. For instance, okay, you have an endotracheal tube that's in somebody's throat, and you're going to go up, you're going to gain 3,000 feet elevation gain, whatever it may be. Which gas law is going to affect the patient, or which gas law is going to affect the patient's endotracheal tube, something along those lines. That kind of question is going to require you to think, okay, well, we're going up in pressure, up in altitude, pressure is going to go down, things expand. I got an ET tube in place. It's got a cuffed balloon. It's got a cuff in there, and that cuff may expand and cause tracheal necrosis. Okay, that's more of an understanding. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit kind of back to that stroke patient and think about the applying type of question to this upper level of Bloom's revised taxonomy of learning. So here's the question. We kind of go back to that stroke patient who, what's a contraindication or what could be a contraindication for giving TPA? And you might, and the correct answer is seizures. You've got a patient who has stroke-like symptoms and they're seizing. Okay. Or there's a report of seizure activity. Okay. And the way you need to think about this is what do you give TPA to? Well, you give TPA to a patient who's got, a blood clot in their brain that's causing them, neurodeficits. Okay. Do strokes associated with emboli or blood, clot emboli generally seize? Not generally. They typically have, your ipsilateral deficits, facial on one side, body on the other, slurred speech, etc. Things like that. The patients that seize, a vast majority of the time, are seizing because of a hemorrhagic stroke, not from a thrombotic stroke. And generally, that is in the subarachnoid space. There's a lot of nerve endings in the subarachnoid space, and you get bleeding into the subarachnoid space. It irritates those nerves, and that causes seizures. So you have to be able to think, okay, I've got a patient with stroke-like symptoms, and there's a report that they seized. Why would I be giving TPA? They probably don't have a blood clot. And if they do, the artery has now ruptured, and now they have bleeding into that subarachnoid space, or it could be anywhere in the brain, but generally it tends to be subarachnoid. That's kind of seizures. So that's the way you have to think through those questions is, okay, well, seizing stroke, I'm looking for TPA contraindication. And you got to be able to think through that. Okay, well, I'm giving TPA for a blood clot. Do they likely have a blood clot? Not in this case, not if they're seizing. They typically have more likely to have a clot. A bleed. And in that case, it's an active bleed. You don't want to give TPA because it's just going to make the problem worse. So that's how the majority of the questions on this exam are structured. They make you think. They force you to think deeply. They're not going to just come right out and ask you to recall a certain amount of information. And so that's why this exam requires you to have a certain amount of experience. You can't just simply take a prep course, sit down for this exam. You have to have had experience working with these types of patients to be able to understand the thought process that gets you from point A to point B and the correct answer for this exam. So I really hope that makes sense. I'm gonna point out, I think it's over here. I'm going to point out over here the Q&A tab. I'm not sure if it's up on your screen. If it's not, on the left-hand side of your screen, there there's a little window that pops up. It says Q&A. If you you click on that, you can you should be able to type in a question for me. So question. Let's see what I got here. Let me know. Let's see. There's also a chat room. I'll bring that up here. See if anybody's saying anything there. I'll type something just in case we're having some issues there. Maybe we can just do this in the chat group. Let me see here. All right. There you go. I can see that there's one person down here viewing the broadcast. Hopefully there's more. If go ahead and pop into the chat group, send me a message if you can, and let me know what you think. Otherwise, over at the FlightCrit Google group, leave me a message. Also, come on over to my Facebook group. There is a page as well as a group. If you want to join the group, I encourage you to go over to FlightCrit on Facebook and join the group. And you'll be able to chat with other people in the FlightCrit community, ask questions, and you'll be able to ask me questions there as well. I'm on there fairly regularly answering people's questions. I also do Periscope. So you can, if you're not on Twitter, come on over and join Twitter. And you can follow me at FlightCrit. And you can also follow me on Periscope. If you're not familiar with Periscope, just do a quick search on Google Periscope Gmail, Periscope Twitter. And you'll find that it's an app that you can put on your phone. And you can follow me at FlightCrit on Periscope. I do impromptu live broadcasts going over different equipment, etc. And you can ask me questions there as well. Okay, enough of that. Well, I guess one more thing. You can see I run the website, FlightCrit.com, where I post blog posts about the latest and greatest stuff going on in the flight EMS community. I'm also posting a series of blog posts to help you prepare for your FPC exam. And I also offer coaching, one-on-one coaching there via Skype. And in the very near future, I'm going to have a full 16-week FPC review course that you'll be able to sign up for. I'm also working on creating an ebook that you'll be able to access there as well. So lots of good resources as well under the resource page. There's videos that will help you prepare for the FPC exam, help you learn about setting up the balloon pump and airway management and crikes and so on and so forth. Great videos. It's all for free. You can go on over there, check it out. I also have a job board that you can click on, daily updates for flight paramedic jobs across the whole country. Again, free. Go on over to the site, click around, check it out. If you like what you see, please sign up for my newsletter. I keep people informed of what's going on, new broadcasts, new blog. So we've talked about the type of questions. We've talked about the categories. And now what I want to do is just kind of cover a little bit of my tips for how to maximize your chances of passing the FPC exam or the CCP exam really on the first attempt. So like I mentioned earlier, the exam is timed. And I just like to remind people of this because it's an easy thing to forget. You get hung up on a question and you're just thinking, oh, you know, you're really focused on that question. You're trying to think through the logic and come up with an answer. And while that is going to happen fairly often, I would say when I took both exams, there were probably 25% of the questions that I got hung up on and I really had to think about. Here's the thing, though. You got to remember that they're timed. And so what I suggest is you go through the questions, and the ones that you can answer within a minute or two, not including read time, because there are a fair number of questions that they're scenario based. And so you'll have to read through a full scenario, and then you're going to answer a number of questions based on that one scenario. So you really need to read those scenarios carefully so that you get all the information, you really understand what it is you're working with. But if you can't answer a question within a couple couple minutes, skip it, and come back to it at the end. What I found was a fair amount of time, fair amount of time, that doesn't make sense. Quite a few times, the information that I needed to help me answer a previous question showed up in a later question. You will get a piece of paper or several scratch pieces of paper. I highly recommend you make notes. If you have some certain formulas that you're just having a hard time remembering, formula for cardiac output, the Parkland formula, whatever formula. There's another burn formula that often shows up on the exam that you probably won't want to remember, or probably, because everybody uses Parkland formula, for instance. But if for whatever reason, you're learning it, you can't remember the Parkland or the other one, have those in your head, review them right before you walk into the exam, and then sit down and write them out on your piece of paper. Okay. You're going to have to turn that piece of paper in at the end. You don't get to take it home with you, but those items, those things that you struggle with, maybe it's remembering how to time a balloon pump. Maybe it's remembering the central venous pressure, what your normal range for CVPs are, or whatever it may be. Any of those recall items that you have a difficult time remembering, as soon as you sit down at your desk, write them down on your scratch piece of paper. That way you don't have to use your brain power to remember those topics. Okay. So that's I guess that's really my first suggestion is free up your brain power to focus on the things that are really important, those higher level of learning items, and get the recall stuff, the formulas and all that stuff. Put them down on your scratch piece of paper, and then you don't have to worry about them again. Okay. Then kind of going back to the questions, if you can't answer a question within the first couple minutes, skip it and come back to it. Make a little note. I did that all the time while I was taking the exam. I wrote down little, just brief notes. You don't want to take any more than just a few seconds to get through the question or write down your notes, because you're just wasting time. But make a little note, and that way you can refer back to your notepad as you're going through the exam. You come up to another question, you go, oh, I think this question relates to something I already saw. You can look down at your sheet and go, oh, yep, that's it. And you can make you can scratch down a little piece of a little note to yourself. Like I told you at the very beginning, as you're going through the exam, it's keeping track of the questions that you've answered, the questions that you've skipped. So you can very easily, at the end, go back to the question. Now, it's just going to say question 1. It's not going to tell you anything about the question. It's just going to say question 1. You click on question 1. It'll be a different color or something like that, and it'll take you back to that question. You can then finish answering that question. Yeah, just remember that as you're going through the exam, you're going to find later questions that will help you answer earlier questions. Okay. What else do I want to say about that? Okay. This is something to think about. Like I told you at the very beginning, there are certain topics that are more heavily weighted than other ones. The general medical, the aircraft fundamentals, critical cardiac patients, trauma management. Those are big sections. I mean, let's look at this one alone. Critical cardiac alone is 18 questions. Well, that right there is, 20%, just under 15% of your exam. If you were to not answer any of those questions, you're probably going to fail. Okay. But if we look at some of the smaller questions, toxic exposure, that's 3. Okay. I'm going to add these up. Toxic exposure, that's 3. OB, that's 4. Neonate, that's 5. What's the other one? Burn patients. Again, that's 5. What do we've got there? We've got 17. So if you're struggling to prepare for your exam and you're feeling like you need more time in a certain category, focus on those larger categories. They're going to give you more bang for your buck. Now, the nice thing is, as we're coming up in EMS, these are the categories that we learn from the very beginning We have a lot of experience in these types of categories: airway management, trauma management. That's my daughter, everyone, if you can hear her. General medical patients. We know these patients. Now, the funny thing is, these are the categories that most people miss on this exam. Why? Probably out of arrogance. We think, oh, I got this. I don't need to. I don't need to work on these categories anymore. Whoa, that's terrible. I don't need to work on those categories. I already know them. It's not a problem. But what we find is most people screw up those questions the most because they don't prepare for them. And the pediatrics, the neonates, pediatric neonates exam in those categories. Why? For a couple of reasons, I think. One is there are very few questions, and so there's less chance for you to get them wrong. Although if you do get one wrong, it's going to have a greater impact on just that category. But two, I think it's because a lot of people spend more time studying those categories because they're less comfortable with them. I'm guilty of that too. Airway management, I am interested in it now, but originally I didn't put a whole lot of emphasis into it. On it because I felt more questions than I thought I should have missed in that category. I still passed, of course. Now, the beautiful thing about this exam is you don't have to pass every single category in order to pass the overall exam. You can totally bomb Neo, get them all wrong, and still pass the exam. Okay, so keep that in mind. But let's go back and look at this again. I'm looking at the exam outline right now, and like I was saying, we've got 3 questions in toxic exposure, 4 questions in obstetrics, 5 questions in neonates, 5 questions in burn patients. If you were to just say, okay, well, I need to focus on the other categories and not worry about those, that's fine. Okay, maybe you think, okay, well, I'm not going to focus on obstetrics because there's only 4 questions, or I'm not going to focus on toxic exposure because there's only 3. Not a big deal, but there's 17 questions total out of those 4 categories alone. And if you blow them all off and you bomb all 4 of those sections, you're probably not going to pass the exam because that's 17 questions. That's over 10% of the exam. That doesn't give you a lot of room to miss other questions. And like I said, most people miss questions in some of those categories that we're most comfortable with. So just keep that in mind. Yes, you do need to put a lot more emphasis into learning balloon pumps and learning VADs and cardiac pathologies, but you don't want to just totally blow off pediatrics and neonates and burn patients and toxic exposures because they're not sexy, they're not fun. They're just the things that we don't deal with too often. Something else that I want to kind of make sure that you are aware of, and this could be obvious to some, but just to make sure that I'm serving you all fairly, understand that just because your service doesn't transport NEOs, just because you may not be part of a neonatal transport team, that doesn't mean that you don't have to know the neonate section. Okay, the exam covers everything in the flight environment. It doesn't discriminate between pediatric and neonatal transport teams or high-risk OB transport teams or fixed wing or rotary. Even if I think we often think of the FPC exam as being an exam for helicopter paramedics, but it's flight, whether that be fixed wing or rotorcraft. It doesn't matter. So you are going to have to know you're going to have to understand the effects or the flight physiology in a pressurized cabin versus a non-pressurized cabin, like we fly in it with a rotorcraft. All right. I think that's kind of the big stuff that I wanted to talk about as far as understanding and preparing for the exam. I'm going to open it up now for questions. See if anybody pops in. I'm just going to kind of bounce between the chat room as well as the Q&A. And so far, I haven't gotten any questions. I can see that there's some people viewing. I really would have liked to have gotten more people actually in the discussion. If you send me your email, I can add you to my Google Plus circles, or just if I have your email, I can invite you to actually join in on the conversation. If you're watching down here across the bottom, right down here, you can see, right now it's just, where is it? Boom, it's just me. There's nobody else in here. I could fill this whole bar up down here with up to 10 other people. So I really would have liked to have gotten more people actually in on the conversation. We can talk. You can ask your questions that way. But I didn't get anybody this time. That's okay. Come back over here to the Q&A section. I can see that there are people viewing the post, and I will admit that I am still learning Google Hangouts. So maybe this is a configuration on my end. Maybe it's just the way Google Hangouts works for people who are viewing and not actually broadcast. I guess what I'll do is I'll join a couple broadcasts myself and see if there's a way I can improve this for you all. I do want to thank you, the people that are viewing, for jumping in on FlightCrit Friday. This is coming up on an hour now. My mouth is pretty dry. I need a little bit more coffee and a little water. All right. Okay. Last pitch. Where is it? Right there. Right below my name. FlightCrit.com. Come on over to the website. Search around. You can leave me a comment at the bottom. You can join my mailing list. I would love it if you would join my mailing list. That way I know that you like the site, you like the material that's out there. At the bottom of every page, there's a little SpeakPipe widget. It'll say, click here to send FlightCrit a message. If you click on that, it's going to launch. It's going to launch your microphone on your computer, smartphone, whatever you might be using, tablet. You can actually send me a voice message. It'll go into my inbox. And what I'm going to be doing here very soon is I'm going to be launching the FlightCrit podcast, where I'm going to be taking your questions, those questions that you send that show up in my my inbox. I'm going to post those to the podcast, and then I'm going to answer your question. And to start off, I'm going to be offering you a free FPC review on the podcast. I'll be going through and answering I'm going to be answering your questions and then going over and reviewing material for the FPC exam. Additionally, I've got the resource page. You can also look for flight paramedic jobs there. I've got videos that will help you prepare for your exam. Of course, there's the blog. That's the main place that I'm putting information. There's an about page. You can learn a little bit more about me. But I highly encourage you to come over and join my mailing list. I am going to be sending out in the next week. I've got it on my list of things to do. I'm going to have the 14 top tips for passing your FPC exam. There's going to be one tip per category. That's going to be a free PDF that I'll offer up to everybody who joins my mailing list. And those of you that are on my mailing list, or who join before that's ready, I'll be sending it out to you as well, as a thank you for sharing your email with me and for showing your support for FlightCrit. I also encourage you to come on over to facebook.com/FlightCrit. You can follow the FlightCrit page, where I also post announcements and exclusive information that's not available anywhere else. And then also join the FlightCrit group, the community, where you can chat with other people as who are part of the FlightCrit community and share your experience taking the exam or preparing for the exam. We've also got a bunch of flight nurses in there as well who can give you a little bit different perspective. And then FlightCrit community on Google Plus is a new page. But if you're interested in more Hangouts, you can go there. That's where most of these Google Hangouts are announced. Every Friday at 9 a.m., I do FlightCrit Friday. If I have your email, either through the mailing list or through the Google Plus or through Facebook, although Facebook doesn't allow me to collect emails quite as easily. If you join the Google Plus community, I can put you right into one of my FlightCrit Friday circles, and I can send you an invite that way. Otherwise, I've got to send you an email directly to actually get you in on the conversation, so you can be part of the hangout and not just viewing it. And then all of these podcasts also, or all of these Google Hangout broadcasts are saved to YouTube. You can come on over to youtube.com, search for FlightCrit as well. I'm there as well. So thanks so much for being part of the broadcast. I hope you got something out of this. Leave me some comments so that I know that you like what I'm doing. And if you want to see something different, also leave that question there as well as on FlightCrit if you'd like. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day. We'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye.